Man leaves girlfriend at gas station. Cops show up after she keeps asking to use the phones. This isn't happening, Lex thought to herself. Would her boyfriend really leave her here? She sat on a broken chair right outside the gas station. She was swaying from side to side impatiently as she waited for her boyfriend. Any minute now he'll turn up, Lex kept thinking. Rob would arrive in their car and stick his head out of the window yelling for her to get back in. But that never happened. Rob was gone. When Lex and Rob first met, it was at a bar they both knew well. Their chemistry was apparent and they decided to go on a date. They sat on Lex's roof and drank red wine while watching the night sky. Rob asked Lex something after 3 months of dating that would alter their lives, even if they didn't know it at the time. "Fancy a road trip?" Rob smirked. She smiled and said, "Of course." They planned the whole thing in a matter of days, deciding to go from New Mexico to Mexico to enjoy nature and go on a hike. They needed this time together to further bond as a couple. Unfortunately, even meticulous planning couldn't prepare them for what was going to happen on their trip. The couple had been on the road for a while and Lex became hungry. Rob decided to pull up at a store while Lex ran off to get something to eat. Rob noticed a creepy old woman watching him, her smile showing mostly gums. Rob was spooked and felt very uncomfortable. As Lex gets back from the store, Rob frantically tells her to get into the car. Lex is confused and then she sees the old ragged woman watching them from across the road. "Let's get out of here," Lex tells Rob in a quiet voice as he nods and puts his foot on the gas. Rob and Lex were still driving on the road, surrounded by desert. It was 3 more hours until they could rest easy and enjoy the view at the end. Half an hour before this, Lex decided she was tired and started sleeping in the back of the van. Rob was focusing on the road when he noticed that his fuel gauge was nearly in the red. The tank was almost empty. Rob spots a gas station and stops for fuel. When he gets out to fill the tank up, the sound of the door wakes Lex up. She needs to go to the bathroom, so she stumbles out from the van and heads towards a bathroom. Rob finishes filling up the van and paying for the gas, so he quietly gets back in the vehicle, not wanting to wake Lex up. Rob didn't notice that she wasn't in the back at all. Lex finishes up in the bathroom and steps out to make her way to the van. She sees a family laughing at each other as they pull into the gas station. Lex can't help but smile at the sight. Her smile quickly fades away and her chest tightens as she sees absolutely nothing in front of her. The ground where the van should be was deserted. All that remained were tire marks. Where's Rob? He's just joking around, isn't he? He'll be back any second saying, "I gotcha," with a smirk on his face. Rob didn't do that. After a few minutes, he was still gone. Lex started to panic and instinctively reached for her phone, but it wasn't in her pocket. It must still be in the car where she was sleeping. Lex ran into the nearby store to ask the clerk if he had a phone. The clerk simply said that they don't have one. Lex was becoming more and more panicked to the point that the clerk asked her to leave the store. Lex said fine in a disrespectful tone and stormed out. She then notices people in the parking lot of the gas station. "Please help me," Lex asks in between sobs. She had approached a few people now and no one had helped. They looked on at her with their curious eyes while their lips stayed shut. Many people presumed that because they were in the middle of nowhere, Lex would steal their phone, but this was not the case. Finally, after 25 minutes of approaching strangers, a kind woman with 2 children had let Lex use her phone. She hugged Lex and told her to remain calm and everything would be alright. She even bought her a coffee. But then suddenly it dawned on Lex. She didn't know her boyfriend's phone number. "I'll just ring my phone as it's in the car," Lex says before dialing her own number. As she presses the numbers on the phone, a feeling of uncertainty creeps upon her. She hears the ringing tone again and again and again. "Please pick up," Lex pleads, but then suddenly the dialing stops and the call ends. Getting more and more frustrated, suddenly a brainwave hits Lex. Using the stranger's phone, she logs into her own personal Facebook account, realizing she could find her boyfriend's phone number that way. But as clever and brilliant as the move was, once she finally had the number and called, his phone was off. It had been 2 hours and Lex was still sitting on a bench outside of a gas station in the middle of nowhere. The stranger that came across the sobbing girl gave her a mixed response. Some didn't believe her, some felt bad for her. One kind man even offered to pay for a hotel room, but Lex didn't want that. She just wanted her boyfriend back. With more and more people staring at her, Lex starts to cry into her lap. She was hungry, tired, and just wanted this all to be over. She never expected this to happen. Wiping away the tears from her red eyes, she thinks to herself, there's no way things could get worse, but then a cop car pulls up. Turns out that the rude store clerk had actually called the cops on Lex. They thought a woman alone and crying in the middle of the desert was suspicious, but Lex was no criminal. She was just looking for her boyfriend. The two officers calmly but firmly explained to Lex that the store clerk had called, complaining about a woman haggling people for phones. Quickly, Lex gave the officers the full story and the real reason she was stranded there. One of the officers sympathized with Lex, but despite this, Lex still couldn't stay at the gas station. Letting out a sigh, the officers gave Lex two options. Her choices were either get a ride to a truck rest stop in the town nearby or come back with her to the police station. Since Lex didn't really feel like spending her evening feeling like a criminal, she decided to go with option 1. As they were driving down the highway, suddenly a call from another cop on the radio comes through. The cop said he was at the very same gas station they just left, with a distressed man who was looking for his girlfriend. "That must be him!" Lex screams from the back of the police car. She turns around and looks out the back. "Turn around now," she yells. Pulling up to the same gas station she was at 10 minutes before, Lex sees her boyfriend banging the windows on his car, looking incredibly distressed. After kicking the dirt in frustration, he looks up and sees Lex on the other side of the road. He couldn't believe it. The two young adults run into each other's arms and squeeze tight. As the couple was finally reunited, Rob explained that he realized his mistake when he passed some stunning scenery and decided to wake up Lex so she could enjoy it too. But that's when, to his horror, he realized she wasn't in the car. He immediately turned the car around and raced back towards the gas station, driving faster than he'd ever had in his life. In between embraces, Rob admitted that he thought the relationship was surely ruined because of his mistake. But as Lex told him to get in and drive, he smiled to himself. The two lovers jumped back into their car and drove along the deserted highway, Lex's hair blowing in the wind with a smile plastered on her face. It was at that moment when Rob knew he'd never ever let her out of his sight again. Wow, what a story! This tale just goes to show that there's no point holding on to anger or grudges. Lex and Rob themselves wasted no time feeling angry over what each of them had or hadn't done. Instead, they forgave and forgot and were able to laugh at the whole thing and then just move on. And that's why they're probably still together to this day.